Hello, America. Welcome to the Voice of Freedom Radio, the voice of rural America and the state of Jefferson movement, which offers you liberty and freedom. Our studios are located in Alturas, California, right in the heart of Modoc County. Our environmental message is the 3C's plan: clean air, clean water, and yes, common sense. We cherish our Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. We will not give up our God, guns, our property rights, or any of our freedoms. Our radio program can be heard on KCFJ AM 570 every Saturday at noon, right after Rush Limbaugh, or visit our website, thevoiceoffreedomradio.com. That's again, thevoiceoffreedomradio.com, to keep yourself informed. I'm Doug.
And I'm Ross.
And I'm Anthony.
Well, you want to say something about him, Ross?
Not really.
There ain't much there to say, is there?
No, he just remembered who he was, though. That's the start.
That means I'm front and center.
Boy, ladies and gentlemen, this Saturday, we got a very special guest here in our studios. We sent out an email to all three of the candidates running for supervisor in District 3.
In Shasta County.
In Shasta County.
Yeah.
We got one response back, and ladies and gentlemen, this lady is as pretty as a little speckled puppy, and she wants to be your supervisor down there in District 3. And from what we've heard, she's got a good chance of getting it done. Ladies and gentlemen, without further detail or delay, here she is, the pretty little Janet Chandler.
Good morning. I am Janet Chandler. As has been said, I am running for Shasta County Board of Supervisors, District 3. Unfortunately, one of the first questions that people ask me is, why would you want to run for public office?
Why, Janet, would you want to run for public office?
That's a
There
good
you
question.
go.
You know that?
Exactly. What kind of crazy person would do this? Well, it's someone who has been around long enough to know that something needs to be done. Something needs to change.
Amen.
I grew up on my family's citrus ranch in Southern California. I know what happens when government intrudes upon private property rights.
What's that?
The private property rights are government.
How do they intrude?
Now, what happens when
What
they
happens
intrude?
when they intrude?
Taxes and regulations.
Yeah.
They come in, they tell you what you can do, what you can't do, and then they tax you for the privilege. I left Southern California, came to Northern California in 1981. I have been in Boerne for 25 years. I retired from a career as a school teacher in Boerne at Boerne High School. And now I am starting out on a new career, and that is to bring representational government to Shasta County.
Janet, we've suffered from lack of representation in District 3 especially over the last few years. Can you tell us what you would do initially to help the citizens of District 3?
The primary thing that I see in Shasta County, District 3 in particular, it's like a movie. And in our case, the movie is the good, the bad, and the ugly. The best thing that's going on right now in Shasta County is when the people take charge of their own fate. We have people in Jones Valley who are working very hard to get themselves a water system that meets their needs, not with the county's help, but in spite of the county. We have people in Palisadro who are fighting against the Tierra Robles development to try to keep the character of their own area. We have people in Fall River who took it upon themselves to come up with a plan to replace a bridge, one that will be temporary and of limited use, but at least will provide access to two parts of the community while a new bridge is being built. We have people in Boerne who were unhappy about the way the county was handling the windmill money. So after being rebuffed several times, not able to get an accounting of how the windmill money was being spent, they filed charges with the grand jury. They want answers. That's the good. That's when the people come in, take over, and do the job that they are supposed to do, and that's be responsible for their own government.
Well, I thought the Board of Supervisors is supposed to take a lead on some of this. Aren't they supposed to represent the people, be transparent? What do you say about that?
I say that you're absolutely right. In a perfect world, that's how it should be. Unfortunately, we have a board, with the exception of perhaps one board member, that is entrenched in establishment politics in Shasta County, and they represent the county and the bureaucracy instead of representing the people.
Well, Janet, in District 3, there are a lot of open issues where the citizens have been neglected in their quest for support from the Board of Supervisors. What can we do about that?
Well, then we get into the bad and the ugly part of our Shasta County movie. The bad part is non-governmental organizations and regional government. These are insidious things that kind of creep up on you. They sound good until you actually start looking into them and you realize that they are not good for the county.
You're talking about EPA and CARB and those, are you not?
Those are two. CARB is a good example. It is not doing Shasta County any good. It is putting restrictions and regulations on business. And of course, business is the lifeline of any area, any organization. CARB has such strict regulations that if you have a house built before 1994, your plumbing is probably non-CARB reliant. If you have a wood stove in your house, chances are it does not meet the requirements for CARB. If you have a diesel engine, you've probably been required to put a $20,000 filter on that diesel engine, which is almost assuredly at some point going to catch fire and cause serious damage.
What authority, Janet, does CARB have?
It's very tricky. CARB technically is a corporation incorporated in the state of Delaware. This California state legislature gave them authority to make rules and regulations. Now, this is not possible technically for the legislature to do because the people hold the authority to give authority and power to the legislature. The legislature does not own that power, so they can't give it to someone else. It comes from the people. So CARB is beyond legal.
Well, you've covered the bad and the good. What's the ugly part?
Oh, the ugly just comes right down to government regulations, government acts, government legislation. That's the sort of thing that we actually can fight because those are our legislators. We can fight if we actually have representation, but we do not have representation because we live in the North State. We have 2 senators for the entire North State and 2 or 3 assemblymen. Compare that to dozens for Los Angeles County alone. Our legislators can work as hard as they can cooperate, they can collaborate, but they are never going to be able to offset the sheer numbers of legislators in Sacramento that come from other parts of the state.
So how do we solve that?
Well, we fight for representation. I believe that the best way to do that is through the State of Jefferson movement. At this point, it is irrelevant for Shasta County, and particularly for the Board of Supervisors, because the people came to the Board of Supervisors, and they had a petition for a redress of grievances, which is part of the First Amendment to our Constitution. And the people, 200, 300 strong in the board chambers, said, "We want you to listen to us. We want to give you a presentation on a plan to get more representation for the North State." They weren't asking for a vote on Jefferson. They weren't asking for grant money. All they wanted was a chance to be heard, a right that they are guaranteed by that First Amendment. The Board of Supervisors, in their vast wisdom, voted, no, we don't want to hear the people. We want you to go away and don't come back. And that's pretty much what they were told. So the people who were in favor of a State of Jefferson movement collected signatures. They collected tens of thousands of signatures showing support for the State of Jefferson. And those signatures have been filed with the state legislature. So as far as the State of Jefferson goes in Shasta County and with the Board of Supervisors, that train has left the station. It's on its way to its next stop. The Board of Supervisors has no room, no seat at the table, and we don't care now what they think.
Well, Janet, let me ask you this question. What advantages do you see that by going to the State of Jefferson would benefit the members of the, like Shasta County and all 21 of the counties that's now represented by the State of Jefferson movement?
All we've ever wanted is representation. We want to be able to control our own fate in our own state. With the State of Jefferson or some other plan like it, if you can come up with one that's better, we'll be very willing to listen. We would be able to have a senator for each county and assemblymen that represent each area. It would give us a closer relationship with those people that we elect to represent us. In the present circumstances, it does not look as if we can get even one legislator to present our petition to the state legislature. That is just another example of our lack of representation. Even our locally elected representatives won't represent us. So it looks as if this whole issue is going to go to federal district court. The State of Jefferson movement has already hired an attorney. They are gathering money to support the lawsuit, and this will end up as a petition for redress of grievances on the basis of non-representation and dilution of vote, and it will be in the court.
We've covered that before, Janet, on this program, and I think, just as an aside, it bears speaking about it one more time. I think the example that you cited earlier of what happened to the Board of Supervisors in Shasta County when they refused to listen to the people, I think that's an excellent example of what's going to happen. I hope the supervisors in Modoc County and Lassen County will pay attention, because if they don't, the people are going to rise up and they're going to protest what they're doing. And the truth of the matter is, if you can't get on board, if you're a supervisor in any of the 21 counties and you can't get onto the State of Jefferson movement and support it, you're going to find yourself on the outside looking in, because this is a valid issue and one that's going to succeed in the courts. That'll be my prediction. So I'm with you 100%, Janet.
Excellent. It's too bad that our legislators don't feel the same way. I recently received a letter from Brian Dolly, our assemblyman, on the issue of the State of Jefferson. Now, this is a logical person who would take forward our petition to the state legislature, but he has chosen not to, and for several reasons. First of all, he states that we are not following a legal process. Well, when the people have a petition for a redress of grievances, there is no legal process. It is simply take it to your legislator and say, we have a problem. What are we going to do about it? Another problem that he has with it is that he senses, and that's his term, he senses that a majority of the people are not in favor of the State of Jefferson. Well, I sense that they are, so which one of us is sensing correctly? He also would like to see it taken as a vote to the people. Well, there is nothing in a legal process that says a petition for grievances has to go before a vote. In the case of Jefferson, there have been 3 methods by which support for the State of Jefferson have been determined. One is a vote of the people, and that has been done in some counties. Some counties have had a declaration of support from the Board of Supervisors. In other counties, it has been done through a signature gathering process, and in that case, the number of signatures gathered has to equal the number of people who voted in the last election. So one way or another, it shows support. And it is disappointing that Brian Daly is ignoring our petition for a redress of grievance.
I think you're being kind when you say disappointing. It's far more than disappointing. It is an indication of the very thing that we're looking for, and that is representation from the people who we have elected to represent us. They are representing the state of California's position, not our position.
That is true, and that's because Brian Daly is being paid by the state of California, but of course at the same time, we are the state of California and we are the ones who are paying him.
Well, more importantly, we have representatives. In this particular case, District 3, Shasta County. We have representatives that are supposed to express our desires and needs. That's not being done today. How would you change that, Janet?
First of all, somebody needs to stand up and say no.
Well, that's you for sure.
That's me for sure. I know the meaning of that word, and I even know how to spell no.
I even talked to your husband, and he says you say no all the time.
All the time. He knows that one. The Board of Supervisors does represent the people. And even if it is a state issue, they have an obligation to interpose themselves between the people and the intrusion of the state. That's the people's first line of defense is that Board of Supervisors. And they have an obligation to stand up to the state and say, wait a minute, what you're doing is not fair to the people. It is not right. And in many cases, it's not even legal. Where was the Board of Supervisors when the state was passing a transgender bathroom law? It's a big issue in North Carolina. I don't know why it didn't become more of an issue in California.
They were all in the bathroom, Jen.
I guess so, but which one and who was there?
I mean, they can't tell the difference?
I know who I am, but I can't tell you what somebody else might be.
Well, Janet, how about the windmill money? The people are asking for clarification there, and they're not getting it.
You know, interestingly, this issue came up at a recent forum where the 3 supervisor candidates were speaking, and the current supervisor gave a quotation supposedly from the contract about the windmill money, and she was wrong. I have a copy of the contract, and she said that the money was supposed to go to Bernie and the surrounding area. That's not what it says. The contract says that the windmill money that is decided by the Board of Supervisors is for the benefit of the town of Bernie, which surrounds the windmill project. And that's completely different from Bernie and the surrounding areas. So because Bernie surrounds that windmill project, it is supposed to be spent on projects that directly benefit Bernie.
Sounds like we need a supervisor who can actually read. That would be helpful, wouldn't it?
It would be helpful if you're going to make votes and decisions based on that contract. You darned well better know what that contract says.
Well, I like your analogy to the movie The Good and the Bad, the Ugly. I want to know when we're going to get Clint Eastwood in here. Is that?
Well, he's closer than you think, since he does own property in District 3.
Interesting.
Let's talk about the economics of District 3, Janet. Right now, there are a lot of issues that are left unsaid about Fall River Mills Valley and MacArthur, and even Bernie for that matter. They're hurting financially. How can we help?
Called Hillary Clinton up. She left the White House, and they was just poor. They was poor.
I heard that she plans on taking out a reverse mortgage on the White House.
Well, from what I've heard from the people in District 3, the last person they want in this area is Hillary Clinton. Anybody but Hillary. Unfortunately, Shasta County as a whole has a reputation for being business unfriendly. We have an absolutely impossible permitting process. The Board of Supervisors says that they know that that is the case and they are working on getting it revised, but working on it isn't getting the job done. It takes a long time to get building permits. The regulations are horrendous. I know of cases in which people have been unable to get permits for buildings to put together a business. They finally just gave up and went to Tehama County. In the southern part of Shasta County, we had Anselmo Wineries that finally just packed it up and left, taking their $80,000 a year in tax revenue with them. It is tragic. Shasta County is full of natural resources, and yet they are being regulated to death. Timber industry, mining. It is sad that we sit amongst all this wealth and yet we can't use it because of regulations either by the legislature, by the county, or by non-governmental organizations and regional government. I give you an example. We have the Inner Coastal Range Conservancy, which they are proposing, which would take several 100,000 acres of land and put it into a conservancy that would be regulated by a regional government committee over which the people would have no control, no say. They would not elect the people on this commission. It would give control of Shasta County land to people that we don't even know.
That would be an NGO, wouldn't it, Janet?
It would indeed, yes.
Does the Board of Supervisors, what control does the Board of Supervisors have over these NGOs?
The Board of Supervisors would have to approve this particular conservancy. But of course, one of the members of the Board of Supervisors would actually be on that commission, and I cannot imagine that that member would be voting against putting himself onto a commission that would control land.
I'm getting the impression, Janet, from all I'm hearing you say, that you are probably more abreast of the issues in the county than any of the people that are presently on that board. I'm impressed. You must have dedicated a tremendous amount of time and effort to getting ahead of all these issues, getting a grasp on them. I can't imagine the people in the county not wanting that kind of support, oversight, and understanding in a board member.
I thank you for your endorsement. I am not doing this lightly. I had a very happy life before I decided to run for supervisor. I could have stayed home and continued to do what I was doing. But I had been attending water meetings. I have been watching what the state, what the county is doing, the regulations from the State Water Board on local farmers, the restrictions that they are putting on land and water use. It makes me angry to see happening here what my family went through in Southern California that led to the loss of our agricultural business. I want things to change. I am well aware of what's going on. I have been studying United Nations Agenda 21. I have been involved in the state of Jefferson. I am looking for solutions. I want something different than what we have now. I have 2 sons and 4 grandchildren. Neither of my sons lives in the North State because it is simply not easy to get jobs here. One of them lives in Sacramento, the other one lives in Arkansas. It is sad that my family cannot be together because of a lack of employment opportunities.
Yeah, that is tragic. We seem to be slitting our own wrists in the northern counties. There are a few of us, like you, Janet, who are well aware of the situation, like Doug and Ross sitting here with me. We know what's going on, we can see what's going on, and like you, it makes us angry. I've experienced exactly the same thing you did. When my children grew up, the first thing they had to do was move away because there was not enough work here locally. I would love to have had my family live around me. I think this is a great place to live. I just don't want to be regulated out of existence.
It does anger me, and I get upset with government at all of its levels that put unnecessary restrictions. But there is a second half to my anger, and it is just as valid and it is just as strong. And that is that the people who allow it to happen and do not fight, who do not stand up and take a stand against government regulation. These are the people who will not attend meetings. They say, oh, I don't go to those meetings, nothing ever happens. They don't go to board meetings. They don't go to Tea Party meetings or Patriot meetings. They stay home and they watch TV and they complain. Now, I know this is true because as I have been out talking to people in District 3 and in the county, I will ask them, which district do you live in? And they have no clue. I ask, who is your supervisor? And they can't name their supervisor or any other supervisor. And they say, well, I think it's a man. Well, that's really good. Out of the 5 supervisors, 4 of them are men. So, good guess.
Well, Janet, you know what that,
80% chance.
Yeah, right.
you know what that sounds like? They live in a state of confusion. What say you?
I'd rather we lived in the state of Jefferson. Yeah. In fact, I've always said if I were going to move someplace and I had the chance, I would not move to California. But I would like to leave everything I have right where it is and move to Jefferson.
Wouldn't it be something, Janet, to have a place there you knew you could go where you were going to be free to use your land and your resources the way you deemed valuable or useful? Wouldn't it be nice to have a place where individual rights and freedoms were honored? Wouldn't it be nice to live in a place like the one we live in, that's beautiful, that's comfortable, that's quiet and rural?
Tony, you're missing it.
Who
You're
won't-
absolutely missing it. That is the state of Jefferson.
That's what I'm getting at. We could have a little bit of paradise in Northern California. People from across the country, businesses would flock to this area. We would have growth. We would have opportunities. We would have everything that we want now simply by making one simple change. We create the state of Jefferson and live in that state.
Well, let's talk about opportunity in Jefferson, specifically economic opportunity.
I would like to limit it to Jefferson, but the reality is that Jefferson is not going to come in the near future. If it's a court case, that's going to take a while. Let's talk about opportunities for economics and business now. What can we do now in Shasta County? The District 3 runs from the Lassen County line in the east, actually to I-5 in the west. It's huge. A large portion of the District 3 population is in the Redding area. Most of those people are actually within the city limits of Redding. There's not a lot that they need from the county. About the best thing you can say is that they need cooperation between the county and the city for economic advantages. So I'm not going to actually discuss that portion of District 3, but let's look at the Intermountain area, the eastern part of District 3. We are rich with resources. We have agriculture. We have adequate amounts of water. We have strawberry seedlings growing, mint, wild rice, cattle, hay, alfalfa. It is awash.
And timber.
And timber. We do have mining, but of course the state of California and the federal government like to restrict that. We have all these resources that should be used to their
You mean to
fullest.
say they don't restrict logging?
Oh, they do, but mining, it's really
That's
limited.
true.
Yeah. It was interesting. In 1992, we had the Fountain Fire, and it was absolutely devastating. It burned thousands and thousands of acres of timberland. But an unusual thing happened. After the fire, because most of that timberland was owned by private industry, they came in, they logged it, and they replanted within a very short span of time. That land is now sprouting large trees. It is a forest again, and it's an indication that if government just gets out of the way and lets private industry do what it does best, we succeed.
Janet, wasn't that Sierra Pacific?
It was, I think Roseburg Industries was also in on the replanting, and Fruit Growers Supply.
I've seen side-by-side comparisons of the land in that fire before and after with the government on one side and private industry on the other. And the contrast is dramatic. The forests under the governance of private industry, like you say, have been rejuvenated. They've come back. They're doing wonderfully. The government's forest looks like a disaster area. It looks like
World War II all over again.
Nothing has been done since the fire.
There is a reason for that, and that's because it is public land. We get environmental groups from places as far away as Connecticut which file lawsuits against the government forest that say you cannot log it. You cannot do anything to it. It has to stay there in its natural state, which of course is burned and ugly. It allows insects to take over, it allows disease to happen, and it does not allow for logging of the burned trees or replanting. So that's why the government land sits there for decades with nothing done.
And that's tragic.
It's tragic. It's not tragic, it's criminal.
Yes.
It is our resources, and some environmental group in Connecticut can prevent us from the proper management of our resources.
So
Janet,
as supervisor, how would you counteract this disaster in planning?
It's difficult. Sometimes the best you can do is just to stand up and say no, to write letters, to not go along with projects that are being foisted upon us by the state. But then the ugly thing raises its head, and here's the good, the bad, and the ugly, and that's money. Grants. We are held hostage to the state dictates and mandates by grant money. If you put together a high-density, low-income housing plan, we will give you grants to help balance your budget. If you go along with what we want with the water board and water regulation, we will give you grants. We're always held hostage to grants. And perhaps that is the biggest advantage to the state of Jefferson. We would not be held hostage to grant money.
Yeah, I call that welfare governance is really what it amounts to.
Exactly.
Well, I do believe, Janet, the fact is that there's a lot of things when we go to the state of Jefferson that would benefit the people in the state of Jefferson. And one of them is that in the state of Jefferson, corporations that's here and the ones that come in would pay zero tax. And that would when they come in to the state of Jefferson, my goodness, look at the jobs that it would take and create. It would be an economic boom. Our children, our grandchildren with good jobs could be here. And also the prisons that's in the state of Jefferson, the state prisons, they revert back to the state of Jefferson. Like the one in Susanville, that would go back to Susanville in Lassen County. And 2/3 of the people in those prisons, this is now California statistics, it's not Tony, Doug, and Janet. There's mostly is inmates from Southern California, and California is farming out their inmates to other states. So they would pay the state of Jefferson to house and keep the prisoners right there. Those prisoners there and the state paying for it would be a cash cow for us. There's many other things. The estate taxes, the death tax. You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly.
Come on, girl,
Yes.
tell them all about that.
Well, I'm a long way from a death tax, but I do understand the concept.
Well, I wasn't insinuating that you was going to go tomorrow. You know what I mean?
I understand. I plan on being around for at least 30 more years.
Oh, God bless Harold.
Yeah. Taxation within the state of Jefferson would be different from how it is in California. And if you have questions about the taxes and the financial standing of the state of Jefferson, I refer you to the website SOJ, as in State of Jefferson, SOJ51.net. Financial figures are from the state of California. They had to put together an analysis for the last ballot in which 6 Californias was proposed. And California says the state of Jefferson can be financially viable. It's possible. It's there. And can you imagine the businesses that would come to Jefferson knowing that it is business friendly, that they are welcomed, that they are not going to be restricted and regulated? It would be a boon.
I'd like to hear you, Janet, talk a little bit about the more immediate things, what you would like to do as a supervisor in the county, what your expectations are, and what you intend to bring to the board with your plan.
The first thing I would like to do, and particularly for the Intermountain area, is the promotion of tourism. We have active groups right now who are doing everything they can to bring tourism, and I think they could use some support from the county. In fact, the windmill money issue came up because a couple of these groups wanted to apply for grant money from the Windmill Fund to support their tourist projects. And it was at this time that they were told, I'm sorry, there is no money left. It's all been given to someplace else. And that's when they started trying to find out where it had gone and were not successful. Tourism and industry in the Intermountain area could be promoted actively right now. It would be a boon to our area. We used to have a lot of employees from, it was Citizens Communications at the time, it's now Frontier. We used to have more PG&E employees. The mills were running with more shifts. Employment in the Intermountain area is devastated. It is very small. When I first came to Boerne, we had 3 shoe stores and a clothing store. Those are long gone. I would make it far easier for businesses in Shasta County, and particularly the Intermountain area, to do something. The Safeway store, a few years ago, proposed an expansion, and they wanted to build a bigger building because the one that they had was totally inadequate.
They wanted to build a 35-acre shopping center in Boerne.
Exactly, with a gas station and coffee and, all the things that the big cities have, but that Boerne could certainly use.
How long ago was this?
Within the last 5 years, I believe. No, it was more than that. But within the last 10 years.
I don't see a shopping center there now, so what happened?
Oh, well,
The real estate sign is still
Yeah,
there.
Shasta County. Safeway wanted to build the building. The people of the town were eager to have it built, and Shasta County turned them down because I heard that this was the reasoning. Shasta County Planning Department did not want to have another empty building in Shasta County. So the people of Boerne have an inadequate Safeway store. Safeway knows it's too small. They've done their best, but you can't create more room when there isn't any. So we're limping along with what we have because Shasta County, who has absolutely no stake in what happens in Boerne, declined to issue approval for that new store. The SRA tax, the fire fee. Why is Shasta County not fighting this more actively? It directly affects Shasta County's economic situation. If I am spending $150 a year on a fire fee that goes to the state, then I am not spending $150 a year in local businesses. And multiply me times how many other people in Shasta County pay this fee. It is a huge amount of dollars that leaves the county and then, of course, goes to the state, and Shasta County is again held hostage to begging for some of that money back. And the money that comes back is nowhere near the amount that goes out.
Well, there are any number of taxes that fall into the same situation where we send it down to Sacramento and we have to get on our knees to beg to get even a percentage of it back.
Exactly. And why should we have to beg for our own money back?
Well, I think it sounds a lot like taxation without representation.
Oh, that's a new concept. Yeah.
Didn't it have something to do with tea?
I think
Oh,
so.
I love that tea.
As in taxed enough already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As in the American Revolution.
Something like that went in the course of human events.
Yeah, well,
But see, too many people out there listening do not even know what we're talking about because they don't even know their rights. They don't know their founding documents. If you don't know that you have a right, then you don't have it because you can't claim it.
yeah.
Education is extremely important, and I spent a career teaching government. Obviously, in many cases, I was not that successful.
Well, I gather that you're really enthusiastic about Common Core.
Oh, I love Common Core. It's just my dream. The only thing I can
Whoa,
She's
whoa,
not,
whoa.
she's not being
the
sarcastic.
only thing I
is
can
she?
say, the only thing I can say to its benefit is that I am so glad I retired before I had to say no, I won't teach it.
Ross, get Janet off the top of the ceiling, will you?
It is an insidious program. It is not government from the roots up. It is foisted upon us by, again, regional, non-governmental organizations who are out to make a buck on Common Core and to make sure that your students do not get an adequate education. Ask someone, a child who is learning how to divide by the Common Core method, and it'll be enough to make you gag. It is sickening.
Yeah.
Instead of just a straightforward divide, and this is the process, there are charts and diagonal lines, and we have to fill in this. It is so totally unworkable that we are going to have a future generation of students who can't do math.
Well, wait a minute. I can do it on my iPad.
Well, good for you.
I hope that you always have an iPad.
I see countless parents out there who say to me, I can't help my child with their homework because I don't understand how it works myself. How can a child go to the parent and say, help me with my homework, when the parent doesn't understand the concept? The more logical thing would be to get rid of Common Core and go back to the way the time-tested and true method of teaching mathematics.
You are right, but understand what the purpose is. It is not logic. It is illogic, because that creates a confused populace. And the other plan is that it wants to separate children from their parents so that the parents do not have as much influence on those kids as the school does.
I think that is the primary motive, Janet.
Exactly. They do not want to have a system in which families are important. They want the state to be more important.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard this little lady speak. Today she's from Shasta County, District 3. This lady is very knowledgeable. She taught schools down there for over 25, 30 years. She's well respected. She loves this country. Janet, would you like to take and brief the people on something else here?
Sure. Let me just finish off with some comments, some observations. 3 times in my life, I have taken an oath to uphold the Constitution, and I took that seriously. It was not lightly done. I have taught the Constitution, both state and federal. I know what the Constitution says. And you need a supervisor who recognizes that protection of your rights and liberties is the reason for the job. You need a supervisor who has the courage to stand up for you against opposition and special interests. I have advocated for a possible solution to the lack of representation. I have observed your current Board of Supervisors violate their constitutional oaths of office by dishonoring your request for a petition of redress of grievances. You know, if you always do what you've always done, then you are going to continue to get what you've always gotten. And frankly, residents of District 3, you deserve more and you deserve better. You deserve a supervisor who is not entrenched in the status quo, who is not part of the county establishment, where the supervisor's personal agenda is of less importance than the representing the rights of all of us. You deserve a supervisor who will support you, stand with you, represent her constituents, not represent the county system, and not represent the bureaucracy. I am that supervisor.
Thank you, Janet. I think it's well said and heartfelt.
Boy, I think she sure done a very good
Well, I like
had
her
an article here today.
I like her good, bad, and ugly representation. I guess maybe she is our Clint Eastwood, right?
I got news for you. Clint Eastwood would run scared.
She is known down there in Bernie with a little lady, and she carries a big stick.
Yeah.
And like Clint Eastwood, she's also a pilot.
That's correct.
Doug, isn't it about time for a commercial?
You better believe it, Ross. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Voice of Freedom Radio. Our programs can be heard on KCFJ, 570 AM every Saturday at noon, right after rush. Or you can listen to all of our recorded programs anytime by going to our website. The website is this: thevoiceoffreedomradio.com. One more time, Tony.
That will be thevoiceoffreedomradio.com.
Ross,
Wait a minute.
what will that be now?
I thought it was thevoiceoffreedomradio.com.
Well, he's got to adjust his false teeth because he's not coming through clear.
I think he's speaking the King's English.
He is? Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored and privileged to have this pretty little lady here in our studios this Saturday. Hope you enjoy her as much as we have and bring her to you.
And while we're at it, Doug, I want to shout out to our listeners. Tell them how much we appreciate their tuning in every week, every Saturday to listen to this program on KCFJ. We hope that we're bringing a message to you that is valuable. I hope you can appreciate it. We're grateful that you're there. We're grateful that you listen. And we ask only one thing of you, that you participate. Find a way to participate. Tell your friends and neighbors about it. Let's get this bandwagon back on the road. Let's get things corrected. Only you can do that. We can't do it alone. So thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you again. Doug, what have you got to say?
Well, Ross, thanks for asking that question because we do have something to say. Because you and Tony and Janet Chandler and myself, and there's a lot of God-fearing people out there that loves this country, knows that if we have to go through another 4 years of Hillary Clinton, what will we become, folks? It's time. You bury your pride just a little bit and look what's best for the country. Look at the Supreme Court. If Hillary Clinton is elected President of the United States, there'll be more justices on the Supreme Court liberal. Folks, they're already saying we got to go to the bathrooms, that anybody can go to the bathrooms, the boys can go to the girls can that. The Sally Jewell of the Interior Department says that we need more parks for all different types of people. You know what I'm talking about, okay? Our country, the Constitution, our way of life. You know that in 2011, when Obama was trying to run for a second term, the Democratic Party took God out of their platform. Do you know what capitalism is, folks? What's capitalism based on? Our government. On our coins it says, "In God we trust." Our government is based on Christian Judeo principles. It's up to you this time, folks. I don't think that there's not any Democrat that is going to be elected would make this country great again. I don't agree with what Mr. Trump says or Mr. Cruz says. The reason why people, in my opinion, this is my opinion, is they're wanting to take and put Trump in there is there is no Democrat establishment that can control him, and plus there is no Republican establishment that can control him. You who out there the last 8 years, and prior to that, when George W. Bush was president and he had the Senate and he had the House, did they do anything to increase jobs? No. What about the Democrats? When Obama come in, what has he done? Has he done anything to increase jobs? No. So what the people are realizing is, why would you want to vote for any of these people? Because they haven't done it in years and years and years. They're looking at Trump to shake up this Washington, D.C., and get us back on a track. It's something to think about, folks, before you say, well, I'm not going to vote for any Republican. It's your call. It's your country. It's your God. What about your children, your grandchildren? Does it make you think now a little bit that maybe that we should all circle the wagons? Maybe some of us will hold our nose when we vote. But is your country worth holding your nose for, folks? Your little, how do I want to say it? Have you got so much ego in your body that you'd want to give up your country because maybe one candidate on the Republican side doesn't necessarily you agree with him all? Don't you think, folks, that it's time that we put our country, our children, our grandchildren, and the future of our country first? You're going to sit back and whine and whimper like a little puppy or a young baby and cry, I can't vote for him. Well, folks, if you don't circle the wagons, you'll get something that you don't really want it to happen. The last thing, Ross and Tony, that I've got to mention is the local newspaper man here in Modoc County, editor of the Modoc Record. Every time that something comes up about our sheriff, he puts it in the off the record here in the paper, blaming the sheriff for this, sheriff for that. It's a wonder he don't start blaming the sheriff for climate change. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he didn't. But when he does this in his paper, look over in the letters to the editor, and there'll be somebody from Oregon, there'll be somebody from Redding, Grass Valley, Auburn, all over. Put a letter in there condemning our good sheriff, Mike Poindexter. Folks, this thing that they got going on with the sheriff, Poindexter, it has nothing to do with the officer Nestling. Nothing what to do with him. It's all about Poindexter because the newspaper man, the Board of Supervisors, the City Council, and the District Attorney, all of them, they don't like Mr. Poindexter, but he is a good man. The Voice of Freedom Radio will stand by that man. Yes, we will. Well, Ross, if you'll wake up Tony and make sure that he's not going to fall out of the chair, I think we've accomplished a lot today. Next week, we're going to have another person on our radio program, and he is running for supervisor in Modoc County, and we will let you listen to that individual. Also, the Hammonds in Harney County, the father and the son are in Lompoc Prison in California, 2 ranchers charged as being terrorists. That's correct. And the reason why Mr. Bundy and that group went in up there to Harney County and went into that refuge and took it over was to get notoriety so they could protest what the Hammonds is, why they're in prison. That might not have been the smartest thing, but at least by golly, they got backbone, and we stand by them people too. Also, the Bundys, when they're in Oregon, they're in prison up there. It's been about 75 days that they've been in solitary confinement. That's right, solitary confinement. Did the Bundys fire a shot up there in Harney County or even down in Clark County in Nevada? Did they fire one shot? No. No. So why won't the state of Oregon and the federal government give them bail? The reason why, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, is because of Robert Lavoie Finicum. And you can go to our website, thevoiceoffreedomradio.com, and you can see Robert Lavoie Finicum, and he will tell you all about BLM when they come into existence. And the federal government could not let the Bundys, Mr. Finicum, and the people who was up there in Harney County spread the word up to Grant County Sheriff up there in Grant County. They had to shut them down. Are you willing for them to shut you down too? Or are you going to stand up and do something about it? Next week we'll have more on this. We're not going to let it die, folks. So, Tony, okay, you got him up, right, Ross? Well, I got Tony's up. So, ladies and gentlemen, from the land that you love and the God that created it, until next week, God bless Robert Lavoie Finicum and the Bundys. Good day, America.